On today's episode, a movie that everyone has actually heard of, instead of a movie no one's heard of, it's Raising Arizona! With me, Scott Ripley.
And me, Joe Cooper.
And Robin Struber as well is sitting over there in the corner.
Just alone in the world with very few points of contact.
And we're here to go through the motions.
Yeah, that'll do.
We're here to Coen through the motions.
What are you saying?
What are you saying, Jeff? What are you saying, Scott?
What are you saying?
So, are we going to talk about what we thought about it? You want to do plot first? Because if I'm honest, I don't really like this film that much. Is that shocking to you?
No, not at all.
I mean, I love Nick Cage in it. I love the performance. I really like the idea, but I don't know if it's because I saw it a year ago with Robin and it's quite recent. But I didn't really enjoy watching it that much. Is that heresy or not?
No. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed this film.
Okay.
Maybe we're starting backwards on this podcast. And
what an interesting dynamic then for this podcast.
Yeah,
one of us likes it, one of us doesn't. Whoa, this is good broadcasting.
I'm actually a little bit in love with this film. I had seen it before, not for a long time. It's faster paced than Blood Simple by about a rate of fucking knots.
I don't even know if I'd agree with that, to be honest. Like, you have the kind of opening montage where it burns through kind of Nick Cage going in and out of prison several times and meeting this photographer who later goes on to marry. And a lot happens in it. But I thought Blood Simple was relatively, like, there was no fucking about. It was pretty quick.
I know. Maybe I wasn't just as interested in it. I'm a fan of Hawaiian shirts and facial hair.
Yeah.
In particular, Nick Cage doing both of them. And I think in this film is fantastic. I think one of the best performances he's done in things that I've watched.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we're both Cage heads. Would you agree?
If that's is that the pseudonym for fans of Nick Cage?
I don't know. What would you call someone who's a fan of Nick Cage?
A Cage face. No.
A Cage face. I think Cage head works pretty well.
Cage head? Yeah. Fair enough.
I'm looking at his Wikipedia page. I can't even find his filmography. That's how... To say the top, not to be confused with Nicholas Gage, who is a Greek-born American author and investigative journalist. So don't make that confusion, anyone at home.
No.
Well, here we go. So if we go through his career, which I was doing, putting it in context of where he is, it's fairly early on for him. I think... is after Peggy Sue got married. I don't know why I mentioned that because I've never heard of it before. And lots of films. So there's only about 7 maybe that he was in before, and I've not heard of any of them. So this is maybe a breakout role, would you say? I mean, this film was successful, wasn't it? It made quite a lot of money, and I think rightfully so. But it's before the David Lynch film he's in, Wild at Heart. Do you remember that? Yeah,
which this did remind me of, maybe just because it's Nick Cage in the desert, kind of driving around going a bit nuts. This one's obviously a bit more whimsical than Wild at Heart, from what I remember when we watched Wild at Heart. But
a bit of True Romance vibes as well, and maybe that's just the Hawaiian shirts and the aesthetic. But
perhaps.
But it's before Vampire's Kiss as well, that film where he plays a crazy vampire. And obviously,
is this just before?
Yeah, I mean, that was 2 years later. So yeah, just before that. So he was kind of a serious actor at this point, I think. He wasn't the full-on, Ghost Rider, Con Air kind of, symbol that he's become by this.
I think that's why I like him so much in this, is because you have those Cage moments that you love to see, but it also has very genuinely well-performed, not just, I'm just going to do Nick Cage because that can get me through a film, because I think he does that a lot. I think the further down the timeline of Nick Cage's career you go, the more he can do that. There's probably a few serious ones. He was in, was it War Dog? Which I think is quite a serious film, which I imagine he didn't get to do much screaming and yelling in. But he has his moments in this, Nick Cage moments. But it's just like just a little taste, and it's perfect. Yeah, perfect. So
And I really buy the couple together. So if we do talk about the plot, Nick Cage plays High, and his wife is called Ed, and they it's kind of, would you call it a meet cute, or does it not fall under the classification of meet cute?
I don't know what that means.
You don't know what a meet cute is?
What do you mean? It's like a kind of weird circumstance that they meet each other in.
A meet cute is like a trope in film and television, where it's like two people meeting and like an unusual way that they're meeting, and you call it like a
okay. Oh. So I was close enough with my estimate. I just didn't know that was the term that got thrown around.
You're true. So you see a lot in rom-coms where people will kind of meet like in kind of funny or unusual ways, which I guess this classifies as, because she's the photographer who's taking pictures of him as he's going in and out of jail. And there's obviously like quite a lot of time passing in between each one, but the way it's framed, which I think is very clever, is in this montage where you kind of see one after one after one, and she keeps seeing him. I don't know if in reality she would have remembered this random guy, but maybe. Nick Cage is pretty distinctive, isn't he? And he's got the hair in this.
I think so. But yeah, they have this moment, or these repeated moments in quick succession, which leads to them getting together.
And they're a very believable couple. They kind of settle down and they build this nice life for them, and they can't have children. They can't adopt because of Nick Cage's like criminal backgrounds. So the height of the film, where the humour lies, is then now they've reformed. He now has to kind of go back to crime, but in a kind of nice way, to steal a baby.
Nathan Arizona's baby.
Yeah, so this big news event, which probably shows, like, it's probably a sign of the times, isn't it? Because I don't think someone having quintuplets would now be a massive news story, but back in the day, there wasn't a lot going on.
I don't know. Some news sources you would find that.
Probably. Maybe in like a local paper or something. So the main plot is they steal this baby because they can't have one of their own, and they try and raise it as their son. And their themes are kind of like of fatherhood and like reforming criminals and stuff like that. So, and it's listed as a crime comedy. I'm not sure if I'd call it that necessarily, but it does have, like, Blood Simple was pretty much a straight up kind of like thriller, and this has a lot more kind of like genre bending and more fantastical elements as well, I'd say.
His she can find no purchase. I think comedy definitely for sure. I don't know. Crime is, I think, it plays a very minimal part in it. I watched it more as like a kind of family thing. I thought it was more important with the messages of building a family rather than, returning to crime and stuff.
Sure.
Should we do plot?
Yeah, I mean, we've touched on it, haven't it? But go on. Give me a rundown of the plot. What did we do last time? Write a limerick.
Right, a limerick. Oh, not another limerick. We could just, I think we should just quick fire it. Go back and forth. We've already touched on the fact that they've stolen this baby. Nick Cage and Holly Hunter, who is actually also in Blood Simple. I think she is not seen on screen, but she is on the phone. You hear her on the phone. What
an interesting bit of trivia.
I know.
And Frances McDormand, who's the wife of one of the Coen Brothers. Again, I can't remember which one, but she is. She's in it as well, isn't she? And she's in Blood Simple as the woman character.
Steal the baby. They get home and they start their life. Everything's kind of looking pretty, doing all right. H.R. McDonough, his old mates from the prison break out.
Yeah, and you've also got the they call him the lone biker of the apocalypse, I believe, like this. And that's more of where the fantastical elements come from. This guy is like tracking them down, and it's very kind of like menacing and shot in a very stylistic way. And he's coming for them because of the bounty, and he's trying to get the baby. So you get this kind of sense of dread throughout the whole film that this guy is going to eventually catch up with them, and there's going to be a conflict, which is kind of the climax.
When I saw that, I instantly thought of No Country for Old Men and a character played by Javier Bardem. This character that seems to be kind of supernatural is chasing down our main characters.
And not to bring it back to a film that no one's heard of, but that does kind of remind me of like the Colonel guy from Blood Simple. From like kind of like odd job man, like he can kind of get anything for you if you want. Is a bit shady, just able to do whatever he wants and get away with it, kind of thing.
Because obviously it's so much more whimsical, like a Saturday morning cartoon. Kind of people almost kind of elastic in the way that it goes about things, and especially that chase scene, which is one of my favourite scenes. But having that character, this bounty hunter, I think if you swapped in Javier Bardem's character from No Country for Old Men, it would still fit because it's still very kind of goofy and weird.
I'm not sure about that, mate, to be honest.
But in a different film, but in this, I think it would come across in a funny way, if you know what I mean.
I suppose. I don't know. I think Leonard Smalls doesn't really kill anyone, does he, throughout the film? Like, he shoots a rabbit or something, doesn't he, when he's first introduced? If he was actually, murdering people like Javier Bardem does in No Country for Old Men, I think it would maybe make the tone a lot more dark and kind of ruin a lot of the comedy.
I kept on thinking of Napoleon Dynamite with the way the camera work was. Of a Wes Anderson film, just very small bits and pieces. There's the shot of the wedding, which is filmed just straight, symmetrical to the characters looking up at the camera, which I imagine being in a kind of Wes Anderson almost montage thing where he does that. He takes weird angles, but only very small bits and pieces. I think that lends to the kind of the whimsy of the film, which I like.
We should talk about their friends as well. They go over to their friends who are swingers, and that's a whole another element to it, isn't it, as well? And this idea that there's no real reason why they can't have a baby, it's almost maybe in a way kind of Nick Cage is being tainted by his criminal life from before, but this idea that everyone else kind of has things exactly as they want and they, for whatever reason, can't quite get to that point.
That's a good point, especially with this couple and what is it, their 5 kids that come over.
Yeah.
Is that these people don't care about their children. It's just yelling at them and throwing stuff at their kid. And
they take them for granted, I would say.
Yeah, everyone else seems to have it how they want it, and it's just his petty criminal past that is, stopping him.
And in terms of representation, I think it is pretty good to have a film that centres on a couple that can't have children. I can't really think of a lot of other films that have that element.
I feel like it's played into a lot of films just to add some sort of conflict and drama, but this is the thing that gets the film started, really.
Yeah, the inciting incident, to use a screenwriting term.
And you're full of terminologies today.
But yeah, I think it's cool. And I think what we don't realize now is that there was a lot of stigma around adoption and this idea that if you couldn't have children, it was just kind of something that you didn't really talk about. And there was a lot more pressure, I think, back in the day to have the classic kind of white picket fence and 3 children and a dog kind of thing, which this film is quite good at showing the other side of that and saying no, actually it is okay to, that's not, because everyone's different and they have their own ways. And I think that's one of the cute things about Hi and Ed together is that they're kind of this atypical, you call them an odd couple, not to keep throwing random terms at you, but
oh man, I understand what odd means. I agree. Yeah, completely. It's and even just where they're shacked up in essentially just the middle of the desert, completely away from suburban life. It shows you the other side of parenting and what families can actually be.
And the idea of opposites attract as well, because he's a criminal, obviously, and she's a police officer, and they're very different people, but their relationship is still really strong, and they still kind of have this very classic bond together.
Yeah.
I think is the really...
It's kind of something, especially with the McDonough character, that kind of creeps in every now and then, and which leads him to eventually get back into or try and start being a stick-up guy again, robbing stores, is that there's moments in where he feels like having the family is tying him down, or it's kind of closing him in where he doesn't want to be, or it's something that he's now not maybe prepared to do or is not used to. And so they both still have these moments of between them, these kind of rifts, this kind of dynamic of that they got going.
Keep using the word fatalistic. I think there is an element of that as well, kind of because he has this criminal element. His whole life is kind of predetermined in a way, and it's never going to be the same as a normal person. You have those fantastic elements as well. So there's a bit where there's a chase scene where he's being chased by the police, and then all the dogs are following as well. And that's shot really coolly. Every single shot is very, very interesting. Where it's kind of following them through the house. Yeah, even when the title comes up, it's really cool. And I think I've seen that used before as well. Kind of
the superimposed.
Yeah, like over
Where it
the
comes
kind of
over
shot of
yeah.
a sunset. That's really cool too.
It's especially that chase scene, like you said, that you already mentioned, like they're going through the house, he having the tights on his head, and he's like got the huggies under one arm, and then like the way that Nick Cage is moving, because he's so wiry in this film, and the way, like when I was saying, like kind of almost cartoony, going through these streets, the dogs are going, the police is going, Ed's in the car with the baby.
He's like a housewife with like hair curlers in. He's like pushing his shopping trolley, and
I thought it was great, and one of the best chase scenes I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think Nick Cage brings a lot of physicality to the role. I can't really imagine anyone else like playing it like that and like getting the tone perfectly right. You know, I read a little bit about the production. Apparently, he was like making suggestions to the Coen Brothers and stuff, and they were just having none of it at all. Kind of like, this is the film we want to make, so just shut up. And I think he did get used to that eventually, but. I mean, it's early in his career as well, so I guess it's early in their career too, like their second. I don't really think they're like egotistical as directors, but I can imagine they have their idea of how they want it to be, and they want it to be exactly right, kind of thing. There are like a lot of farcical scenes, and like there's one later on where John Goodman and his brother are like sitting in the house, and they're just surrounded by empty beer cans, like a comical amount of empty beer cans, and they're like on the windowsill and stuff as well. So it doesn't really make sense, but it's obviously there as like a production thing to kind of show that this is more a fantastical world. But then it's also like grounded, and you really care about these core characters and the couple. Yeah, it's a very difficult thing to do, and I think it is very successful.
Yeah, I've been just thinking about the farcical thing, like the comedy as well hadn't been completely fine-tuned. I mean, I'm not an expert in comedy. There's certain bits where it just stayed a bit too long, or the joke should have ended 30 seconds before it did. I get it. Comedy can be like a war of attrition after a while, and you do things enough time, it becomes funny, but it kind of overstays its welcome.
I mean, there is a point where something stops being funny and then it becomes funny again. But if you don't take that quite far enough, you just end up with kind of like just overstaying your welcome with the humor. But, Leonard Smalls, what's that a reference to, Scott? Literary reference?
What, Lenny? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I never picked up on
I think his full name is Lenny Smalls and of Mice and Men. And Steinbeck, I think, was kind of an author who writes prose that's very similar to the kind of tone the Coen Brothers have, like kind of small town America in the South and stuff, and these stories about characters who. There's kind of a lot with these podcasts is I just kind of start talking and halfway through I'm like, what am I just sound like such a twat. Like, I mean, not to admit a lack of cultural knowledge, but I was never asked to read Of Mice and Men in high school, so I've not read it.
I think that's the trick as well. No one goes, oh yeah, I read Of Mice and Men. It's, I was made to read it.
Yeah.
Because everyone has to read.
True. And if we talk about like the character design of Leonard Smalls, is very distinctive. He's got kind of like all leather, like very like biker gang shit, and like what would you call like his like facial hair situation?
Grizzly Adams.
He's got better facial hair, him or Nick Cage in this film.
Generally, the aesthetic, I'm vibing a lot more with Nick Cage. I'm not one for shotguns and leather, which is a great name for an album.
Kind of, it's a good name for an album.
I think the strength of this film isn't the comedy. The film is actually carried on the heart.
I don't know if they wrote this to like comedy to be the focus. I think it's more it got marketed as that because it's quite hard to put in a box. And looking at the poster, it does say this is a comedy film. It says a comedy beyond belief. That was the tagline.
I believed it.
I think they said the same thing where they wanted to counteract Blood Simple and make something completely different for their second film. So they wrote it to be very positive. They maybe started it off as kind of like a crime film and then they found they could add in more comedic elements as they went on. It seems more like that to me. Like it doesn't seem like it was written necessarily as a comedy, but
yeah, drop in the little bits of comedy or the aperitifs. I'm going to start using that a lot more. Maybe that's my maybe we all need a catchphrase. Comedic aperitifs.
Comedic aperitifs.
Yeah.
That should be the name of this podcast, really.
There's no comedy in this podcast, Joe.
It's true. That's sad, isn't it?
But I think it's the start of their kind of love affair with the South and stories of the South of America that you can just get.
Like a folk tale, right? Like partly kind of mythologized and legendary and stuff. Would you say that the South is a character in this film, Scott?
Oh, that's a bit of a cliche, mate. We're not fucking around with cliches.
David,
I probably would say that, yes.
David Wayne made a comedy called They Come Together It's like Amy Poehler and Paul Rudd, and it's like a parody of romantic comedies. And he, like, in the marketing of it, all he would say is, New York's a character in this film. Obviously saying it ironically, but he would just say that over and over again. I think. Yeah. It's a really pretentious thing to say, isn't it? Where would you say Arizona would fall on the call sheet for this film?
I thought you said call sheet as in what's the coolest? So it's pretty cool, man.
I prefer that, actually. No, a call sheet is like something that everyone part of a film gets, and it kind of ranks the actors in terms of how important they are to it and when they need to be on set every day. So obviously Nick Cage would be first, and then Holly Hunter. And then would you put Arizona as third build on the call sheet, or is it further down?
That would be first.
Okay. To be fair, you do need a location. Ultimately, like, character and setting are completely separate things, so I don't think you can ever justify saying that a location is a character in a film. I think that's a really cunty thing to say.
Whoa, man, coming on strong. Actually, because if you did the film about sand dunes, right? Because sand dunes move, and it could be a film, a travel film. You know, you have like that Great American Road Trip, but about sand dunes. And then what you do have is a location being the character. Don't know how you'd hit the beats that a normal character has to hit in a film.
I think we should write this. This sounds good. You take it even further, you could do a film about a tectonic plate, very, very slowly moving from one side of the world to another side of the world.
Yeah,
it could be volcanoes it forms on the way. Sounds like a great film.
It could be like Boyhood, but over a millennia. And we wouldn't even be able to finish it. It would just get passed down through production generation until it's finally made, and then no one's around to watch it.
Yeah, the world is there.
Apologise. That would be the centre of Birmingham.
You've kind of won me over there. I think I like this film more now than I did when we started having this conversation. I mean, we should probably rank it. I personally would put Blood Simple above this. Maybe controversial, but
I'm shaking my head in disagreement.
Thank you for narrating that. Tell me why you think this is better than Blood Simple then.
Well, I just did about half an hour of explaining to you why it's better, you know? Didn't really come with the aim to win you over. I thought you would have at least enjoyed it more than Blood Simple. I thought you would have.
I actually really liked Blood Simple. I think that was a really cool film.
Which is interesting, because if I remember correctly, I rated it higher than you did on the last episode. So this is going to be a tough one to rate, because I feel like I've started too high now.
Something I didn't pick up this time, but I re-listened to me and Robin talking about it. And I believe Leonard Smalls, the biker guy, has the same tattoo as Nick Cage. Is that right?
Yeah, they're both Woody the Woodpecker.
Which is also maybe his aesthetic. Nick Cage's aesthetic is based on Woody Woodpecker in a little bit. And I think they talk about the fact that his hair gets more crazy, kind of as a representation of his character. Which I think is always cool when there's an element of something like that in a film, where something represents the way they're feeling. I mean, I can't think of an example of it, so it's a pointless thing to say. But
it's not pointless, Jeff. You gotta believe, man.
So they go to the adoption agency and his hair is very kind of calm. And then in that scene with the tights on his hair is just fucking crazy.
Yeah, I think.
So why do you think they have the same tattoo? And I have a clip of Robin talking about this. You can maybe use this now. Why do you think?
I don't know what you mean. Rob's here with us, mate. Rob, what do you think?
What do you think about the tattoo that the Leonard Smalls and Nick Cage both have the same tattoo, Rob?
The fact that they have the same tattoo doesn't make any sense in a lot of ways, except if, you know, it's one of those things where you'll get if you go to the same prison or if you're part of the same gang or something.
No, it's bullshit, mate. That's nonsense. What the fuck are you talking about?
What do you mean? It makes complete sense. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
I thought about that when I watched the film and I came to no conclusion.
I like that though, when things are open for interpretation. So that could mean any number of things. Like maybe they both have kind of a criminal background, and like we were saying before about they've been tainted by it for life and they're never able to get away from that, possibly. I think Robin said maybe he was his father or something, but like, why would they have the same tattoo if it was his father? So
what are you drinking, Rob?
Oh, I'm just such a bad human.
Oh.
So how many quintuplets would you give it? A Harry, a Barry, a Larry, a Gary, or a Nathan?
A Harry, Barry, Larry, Nathan, and that's it.
But not Gary.
Because you got to get Nathan in there, because Nathan's a key part.
You do, yeah.
I really enjoyed this film. Might be one of my favourite films of all time, which is a big list, because I can just keep adding to it, really. I mean, no one's there to
There's no quantity to it. There's no limit, no cap.
I'd
I'd give it a Barry, a Larry, a Gary, and a Nathan. I can't remember if that's the same as you gave it, but 4 stars, but not Harry. Harry, I think
you put a Gary in. Yeah.
I put a Gary in. Okay. So we slightly differ, but we ultimately have very similar opinions about this film. And if that isn't a conclusion, then I don't know
what isn't, eh?
If we've got nothing more to say, I guess we can talk a little bit about the next one. We're going to watch Miller's Crossing. You familiar with Miller's Crossing?
Not at all, actually. It's probably, if you asked me to list Coen Brothers films, wouldn't have even said it.
I like it a lot, but it's like a gangster film kind of in a way, and like an Italian mafia film about this guy going around like New York, and like he's got debt. I don't want to say too much about it, but it's
you might have said too much, Joe.
Beautiful. Do you want some kind of better ending than that? Or is that what we're going to have to deal with?
I know. Are we convinced?
Rob, what do you think? How should we wrap this episode up?
I feel like, it could just be more unspectacular. It could just be like, gang, or that's what you get.
Yeah, I think that works. But we would be remiss if we didn't mention that this landed 45th on Bravo's 100 Funniest Movies list.
Hang on. Dog the Bounty Hunter, Bravo.
What? Is that the channel he's on?
You don't know what I'm talking... Yeah, right. I don't think it exists anymore. Right, Cable. Dog the Bounty Hunter.
That does link back to Leonard Smalls, doesn't he? He gives me kind of Dog the Bounty Hunter kind of vibes as well.
Well, like the saggy old man in leather.
Yeah,
you're quite right. That's exactly how I remember it.
I've never seen it, but from like cultural osmosis, I think I picture Dog the Bounty Hunter as looking like Leonard Smalls from Raising Arizona. I'm looking at pictures of him now, and he's a lot more. Oh,
Dog the Bounty Hunter?
Melted. He has like the Tommy Wiseau thing where.
How do you get that melted?
It must be
that horrendous. Like it's like if Peter Stringfellow let himself go. Even more, you'd have hair like that. It's quite something.
I'm really sad that you've made me look at pictures of Dog the Bounty Hunter.
Don't pretend like I made you.
I think you've ruined my day. What do you think his real name is, Dog the Bounty Hunter?
Dwayne.
Okay. How do you know that?
Yeah, it is. Dwayne the dog.
Dwayne Dog Chapman.
Jesus.
The Chapman family.
Man, that TV show is trash. That was like, most reality TV shows. I wonder if they're going to do it. They do it. And there's just some guy who's just like, got caught with a fucking joint on him. And then they get a crack pipe out of nowhere. And then they're like, you gotta find God, bro. Gotta find God, bro.
I can't even picture what that show would look like. Is each episode like a different crime that he has to investigate? Or
yeah, well, they're bounty hunters. So they like chase down bail bond people who have like skipped court or whatever. That's
not still a thing though, is it? Like bounty hunters actually exist in today's day and age.
Yeah, man. That's what bail is. The bail system, isn't it?
Production was halted on 2007 after the release of an audio tape that featured Dwayne Dog Chapman using the N-word repeatedly in a discussion.
Yeah, the guy's a fucking scumbag.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me, to be honest.
These people are living in poverty in Hawaii. They're just trying to fucking get by, and then this guy in a fucking SUV basically runs them over and then boots them into prison.
How is it legal to film that? Like, surely, like,
no man, it's TV. Have you never seen Natural Born Killers? Okay, well, the whole TV angle comes in a lot later on. So
yeah, I'm sure it is. I should watch it. Go back and watch it. Wow.
I'm not gonna keep that in. So
no, I mean, none of this is going in, right?
No. But, well, maybe the bit about Dr. Bounty Hunt, depending on how we're doing for time.
How we're doing for time, we've not got like a limit to meet, have we? Like we have to.
Well, I thought. Do you want to keep it half an hour each time, or is it?
I like keeping it relatively short. Half an hour is cool, but if you think there's enough content here, I mean, from the conversation we had, I don't think there is. But if you think there's enough for like an hour, then by all means, make it an hour if you want.
Hey, trying to stretch it to an hour? No, you got to know what you're working with.
I used to try and make him an hour, but I think that was probably a bad decision because it was a lot less focused as well. So we just ended up talking about random shit.
But like
reality TV, yeah.